Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. Let's do another short story review here today. Today's tale is The Smiling People. In this tale, Mr. Greppin comes home to his Aunt Rose and Uncle Dimitri one day to their weirdly soundproofed home. They are sitting at the kitchen table, and he announces to them that the woman he met 2 weeks ago, Miss Alice Jane Ballard, who he proposed to, they're getting married, and he intends for her to move in shortly, and that he wants them out of the house. Greppin seems to have this weird problem with sounds. The house is soundproofed, and he wants his nagging relatives to go away. But his family, they're seated around this table. They're described in such a way that they could be mannequins. I think he actually describes his aunt as sort of being like a department store mannequin. But they have this feeling of being sort of like wax dummies, if that makes any sense. Sort of like as if they're posed around the table in a scene. Eventually, he admits that the story was made up. He just wanted to get them out of the house and to make them think that somebody could love him, and also to make them smile. Later that evening, the police show up. They knock at the door. He doesn't want to let them in. Eventually, they break it down, and they find the family seated around the table. It seems to be, because they had their backs to them, it seems like everything's kosher. However, when one of them falls over to the ground, it's revealed that they have all had their throats slashed from cheek to cheek, from ear to ear. And it looks like they have smiles on their faces. And we learn that Miss Alice Jane Ballard never existed. 2 weeks earlier, Mr. Greppin had killed his family, and he just wanted to make them smile. Yes. A very odd tale, but a very good one. One of the better tales that I've read from this story collection from Bradbury in recent days. There's a lot going on. It's a horror story. Sort of on the in the beginning and the base level, there's this feeling that it's not a horror story. There's this feeling that it's just a weird story where you have a weird guy living with weird people, and he sort of sees them as being no fun, joyless nobodies, and it could get away with that. It could be that type of story, but this is Bradbury, so at some point usually the supernatural does come into it. The supernatural, or the weird, the sort of the more genre side of things. And we find out that it's very much a Norman Bates type story. I'd be interested to know where exactly the inspiration for this tale did come from. But there's this feeling that it probably came from some kernel of reality. The whole smile thing on the face reminds me, of course, of Heath Ledger's The Joker, which of course came, decades later. But it definitely, that lineage is there in The Joker, or in Heath Ledger's performance. Mr. Greppin is obviously sick. However, he obviously endured a sort of a joyless life with joyless people who never smiled and had this severity about them. And he's a monster, but I think there's this sense in Bradbury's prose that this monster has been at least partially created. We are, and oftentimes, sort of products of our environment, and I think it would do well for people to understand today, as horrific acts often happen. School shootings come to mind to me, that people don't get twisted and broken on their own very often. There are cases of actual mental illness born genetically into a person that causes these things to happen, but generally it's people's mistreatment, lack of good upbringing, lack of being taught humanity and these other things that twist them into monsters. And I think that's the case with Mr. Greppin. I think the moral of the story here is that good people get twisted, and for this reason we in good and well told sort of stories about horrible people, there should always be this kernel of us that feels a little bit of pity for them, and it's that ability to show pity actually that makes us better than the people who twisted the murderer, but also it makes us understand what separates us from a person who is able to commit these sort of crimes. So yeah, guys, The Smiling People, it is a pretty top-notch psychological murder story crammed into about 4 pages. I highly recommend it. It's available in Bradbury Stories and elsewhere in the very sizable Bradbury bibliography. So be sure to check it out. And if you're into this type of thing, please subscribe and tune in soon for more story reviews of the great Ray Bradbury. See you soon.